Hello, all you positive heads. Welcome to a very special episode dedicated to none other than you, the PeaHeads themselves. I am your PeaHead enthusiast and hostess for the day, Alexa Hauser. I have been blessed to have the experience of helping out with Positive Head social media for the better part of a year. And through my digital interactions, I began to realize, as did Brandon, that we have some incredible beings listening to the show who are taking the information that Brandon puts out through the podcast and using it to transform their lives and create wonderful things. You listeners are all a huge, huge part of the life force that propels this show forward through time and space, and we think it's time to bring forth some of you beautiful reflections and delve a little deeper into this collection of energy that is the Positive Head community. So as we shine the spotlight on our listeners, what we'll have them do is share their stories of how they attracted Positive Head into their life, the transformation it's facilitated for them, and what they're focused on creating now that they're in a more positive headspace. Also, this episode of the Positive Head podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Hello, all you positive heads. On this week's HeAd Posse episode, our guest is Positive Head listener Colleen Coles. Colleen is a purpose alignment coach who helps women feeling stuck in their relationships, purpose, and intuitive power access their authenticity and connect to the divine to better serve others in their purposeful career and in meaningful relationships. And Colleen is actually back for a second time. Some of you listening might notice that this name is familiar. And so I asked Colleen back because I had a scheduling change this week. And I thought, you know what, who would be better to bring back than Colleen, who we had so much positive feedback about, and also everything that she's talking about and everything that, you know, all the wisdom she brings to the table, I feel like is super relevant right now. So hi, Colleen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Alexa. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming back and gracing us with your presence and your light and your wisdom. We had, like I just said, we had so much positive feedback from the first episode you were on. People just loved everything you had to say.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And, like I said, so, you know, it was a spontaneous thing that happened. And, you know, Colleen was the first person to pop in my head. And, we dove into, when you were on this podcast, I don't know how many weeks ago it was now, but we were really kind of starting to scratch the surface of codependency, right? And, and what that is really, and kind of how that affects our lives, ourselves, our relationships. So just for anyone who might not have heard that and anyone who's just tuning in, do you want to just maybe give us an overview of what codependency is?
Mm-hmm. So the last time I was on, what we frame codependency as was one of the biggest blocks I see for people in their relationships, in them owning their true authority and authenticity in the world, and then living out a bigger purpose and just being themselves. So to keep it to relationship, though, this is really the way I see people get burnout in relationship and not even attracting in who they're really meant to be with. Just establishing healthy relationships. So codependency it's so funny. I keep thinking people know, but just because I know, like I was with a couple friends and they asked me all these really interesting questions. Well, is this codependency? Is that? And it's so simple, yet it's also very complex and kind of sneaky. So I'm going to give you a really broad but basic definition, and I bet you will be able to see it in your life. And then we'll, of course, dive into like how it affects your life. So what codependency is basically this feeling and tendency that we need other people in our lives in order to be okay. And that in order for us to be okay, we need them to be happy for us to be happy. We need them to be okay for us to be okay. And another really simple way of looking at it is where you have kind of like two cups, and you're a cup and another person's a cup. And the way that when you feel codependent, you fill up your cup is by thinking the only way to fill up your own cup is to get somebody else to do it for you. And so that can become kind of an addiction, because we then think we can't live without this other person. We can't live without this other person's love. And so what we end up doing to have that person fill up our cup, whether it's a romantic relationship, a business working relationship, a family dynamic, what we'll end up doing thinking this way is pouring into the other person so that then they pour into us.
Totally.
That's really the baseline of what codependency is. It can become an addiction to another person, another thing outside of yourself, where it regards relationships.
And how does codependency form? Like, why are all of us, because, and you know, for many people listening, this might be like the first time you're even becoming aware of this term. I know that I only started becoming aware of this term within the past year. And even just talking to, even though I was aware of the term, like not until we were talking, Colleen, was like my mind just like exploding, because I was like, oh my God, this is what has been going on my whole life. So, you know, how does this, and, you know, to that point, I feel like the more we all start to learn about it, the more we realize like almost every single one of us are codependent on something, like on someone or something. Right. We're all in these codependent patterns. So why is that? Like, why are so many of us so codependent? How does this pattern start?
Yeah. I'm with you, Alexa, where I also felt I had kind of a basic understanding here, and like, oh, I got this. Like, it's really simple. Like, okay, I can't be happy till you get happy. That leads to people pleasing. Okay, got it. But then when I found out kind of where it comes from, it was easier for me to see the foundational, like, landscape of how it can affect so many areas of our life. And I think I've shared it before that I believe it's pretty rare to find people who don't have some aspect of codependent tendencies running in their life. And here's why. It's because it really comes down to boundaries. And so where does this really come from? Let me just give it a little bit of a background. So psychologists in the 70s and then 80s started to study this as a concept as Alcoholics Anonymous and those programs became more popular. So what they ended up seeing was that people who were addicted weren't the only people being affected by the drug. They also noticed certain tendencies with the people who they were in relationship with, whether it be the kids of an alcoholic or a spouse or partner of an alcoholic or a drug addict. And certain tendencies started to be prevalent, and they realize like, oh, like people need help. And in the most severe kind of encompassing type of codependent tendency, it's when a person's addicted to another person. So it's like the alcoholic's addicted to the alcohol, but the codependent feels they can't live without this person, whether it means I can't live without their salary and taking care of me. I can't live without their love. They're the only person for me. And so that can be the more like drastic root of codependency itself. Is like anytime somebody comes to me, maybe thinking about working with me, and they're like, I have an alcoholic father, or just any type of drug addiction in the family, that's a really good sign that you've probably developed codependent tendencies. Because what we end up doing is in any type of any type of a family dynamic, we kind of try to keep safe when there's outbursts, especially for somebody who's like an alcoholic. Say they come home and they're drunk and you're like 5 and you feel like it's your fault that daddy's yelling at you. It's not your fault. But as a child, we try to create this security around us feeling loved and us feeling safe. So we develop tendencies so that we feel okay, we make them feel okay, so that we feel safe. And so that's kind of the more extreme version. But if you have any type of alcoholism in your family, or grew up with that, or your families did, or your parents did, and they weren't directly the alcoholic, but their parents were, you can probably bet you have some of the tendencies we're going to talk about. Now, with that being said, that's where it really rooted. But what's so interesting is how it can affect so many other areas of our life with less dramatic background. Okay, so where does this come from? Where it really comes from is with our families not having boundaries. So boundaries are the antithesis of codependency, because again, codependency means I cannot be happy until you are happy, because I am getting my identity out of you. And so therefore, we're connected. And that's why it's really prevalent, tricky as an empath or as a spiritual, caring person, because you're actually getting a lot of identity and literally feeling what other people are feeling. So it can be so hard to tell where their feelings are and yours start. But literally, codependency can come from us not having a boundary of identity from another human person. Okay, so boundaries are the antithesis. And if we grew up in a family dynamic, maybe it was like smooth sailing, or just regular, quote unquote, whatever that means, but like non-dysfunctional in the extreme family. Most likely, we've been taught to not have boundaries. We've been taught to be our sister's keeper, our brother's keeper, usually at the expense of ourselves. We've been taught in religious and cultural background. It's about, like, I grew up Catholic. I became really Catholic. This whole idea of sacrifice and martyrdom has been lifted up as a value. And yet, when we take that too far, and it can get kind of warped in thinking this is how I get my needs met, or this is how I get my value, that's when we're doing stuff actually not out of service, but out of a way for us to get our need met. Okay, so like, even if we're not even religious, it's just nuts to me how prevalent this comes up. So it's kind of like, yeah, it can be from culture, from how we think, we need to relate together as humans, what's valued. But basically, another place it can come from is when there was shame in expressing yourself in a family dynamic. So notice all of these things to answer this question comes to, okay, it's the family, right? It's how you grew up. Because from 0 to 7, that's when we're downloading our blueprint of what it means to be a human being on the planet, right? Energetically, psychologically, all of these ways, physically. And so that starts in the family. So it can be a very extreme case of where this comes from. It can be more of a moderate thing of absorbing it through our culture, our schools, our values, our religious background, all of those ways. The other big way it comes, Alexa, is through when we felt unsafe to speak up. Okay, so if a family had rigid rules, if a family had kind of this shame around you expressing negative emotion or anger, that it wasn't okay to speak up. If it was like shame around keeping a family secret, hey, we have to look good. We got to be on time for like Aunt Joyce over here and like look the part. We got to look the part for the school. We got to look the part, like put your tears away or put your whatever it is of you expressing yourself away. That's what can also create codependency because of the shame around just our expression, and therefore, feeling afraid to be ourselves, right? And therefore then also to fit in this family dynamic, needing to be a certain person, needing to be a certain way. So that's why I feel like it's so prevalent, right? Like, who hasn't been in a family dynamic where there weren't boundaries with you and your mom, or where you felt you needed to, if you were too loud, that wouldn't be okay with your friend setting because you got made fun of when you were in 3rd grade. Like, those are the dynamics that cause us to be codependent. What it doesn't, when we aren't codependent, that's when we've had healthy boundaries, when we've brought up to feel and that we can speak our truth and outlet those feelings, whether they're good or bad, where you felt safe to express yourself and where people were moderately functional. And I feel like that's just not the norm. It's possible. Sometimes also people, which is a whole another interesting fact, like I knew a server I worked with who she really just didn't give an F what other people thought. And giving an F about what people think, like being afraid of people's judgment, being a people pleaser, feeling like you're walking on eggshells with certain people you think are authority, right? Like actually this all has to do with authority outside of you because you think you're empty and they will fill your cup. For some people, that isn't the case. They actually don't care. Maybe you're rebellious. And I remember talking to her on a shift. I was just like, I just really respect you for not caring. And what was so interesting was how she was like, yeah, well, that can be a problem too. And I was like, what? But then later I learned just because you're not caring what other people think doesn't necessarily mean you're free. Like the 19-year-old boy who feels they've been stuck with a dad that hasn't been listening to them. So he rebels and goes out and does the exact opposite of what his dad wanted and like becomes a rocker and does drugs because his dad was so clean cut. That boy is not free yet. Right. Just because he rebelled, it actually just means he's still being dominated by this thread of him being connected to his dad. He's acting out from being...
He's still codependent, just in a different way.
Right. And typically... Yeah, exactly. Like, Carl Rogers, the humanistic psychologist in the 1970s, kind of labeled it this way. So everybody just imagine like this... We're going deep here. This is like a download. Okay.
I love it. Yes. Keep talking.
Thank you. So Carl Rogers kind of deemed it this way, where there's kind of a pendulum and there's three parts. Okay. So we have alliance, which is in the middle. That's alliance to our soul. That's balance. There's defiance. And then compliance is the third. So I would deem compliance is more on that codependent, kind of classic codependent frame of mind, where you feel like other people are better than you. You're putting others as your higher God or higher self or authority, rather than you seeing yourself as equal to them with your cup filled and their cup filled. And so you tend to kind of go back, like shoulders are crunched. You're kind of like tail between your legs. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. All of those types of tendencies. The rebellious type is that defiant, where it's more like, F you, I'm not giving an F anymore. Boom. Like I'm doing all this stuff. I knew someone who like, because he wasn't being heard by his family after starting to work on his own stuff inside with a counselor, he wasn't being heard by his family, even after trying to talk with his dad about this stuff, even after trying to talk with his mom. Like they just weren't receptive. He ended up moving across the world to Asia to just teach English because he's like, I'm sick of this. I can't live here. So even though there's a big boundary there, which is great, that person, he's still being kind of controlled by that family dynamic, right? He's moving out of Asia, maybe not because he likes Asia, but literally because it's just to get as far away as he can from that dynamic. Sometimes we need that big of a boundary. But that's the defiant. So it's more of an aggressive form. It's more of an aggressive form of this codependency where you're still coming from the place of thinking, I cannot express who I am. It is not safe for me to be who I am and be accepted and supported in my community.
Right.
So the place of balance is this alliance place, which is I'm going to move to Switzerland because I really love Switzerland, right? Like, let me taste that. Let me see what I like. And coming to the table with a boundary that says, for example, I'm going to hold off on going to the party because I notice I just need time for myself. Like that's a real boundary that's coming from a place of maybe balance rather than I'm going to go to this party even though I really don't want to. That's more of that compliant. And then the other extreme of, well, F everybody, I'm not going to that effing party because you all are crazy. That's not a real boundary.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I was relating. I mean, I was just, while you were talking, I was just thinking about how I've been through all those stages and, and just thinking also about, so something was coming up for me. I was thinking about how just last night I was noticing this. So, in my world, right, I work from home during the day. My partner goes to work at like an office during the day. And then at a certain time he comes home. And so yesterday, like a couple hours before he came home, I was like I went on this walk. I was getting really inspired about some things I wanted to do. And then the second he came home, it's just like, suddenly like my brain, it literally feels like my brain gets scrambled because suddenly my vision just like disappears. And I just kind of am like, wait, what just happened? Like, what just happened to my motivation? And the thing is, nothing's happening. There's like, he wants to come home and veg out. Like he's been talking to people all day, dealing with people all day, like dealing with really high pressure situations. Like he just wants to relax. And so it's not like there's anything going on that's like really demanding my attention. But for some reason, something it's like my vision is just diffused. And suddenly I'm just sitting there like, with him, which is fine. But I'm like, wait, I just had a lot of things I wanted to do. Like what happened to that? And I was just thinking about it last night, like, cause I've noticed this for a while, but last night I suddenly was like, wait a minute, this must be some sort of like, like, why are you, I feel like you're like, oh, of course I know. Or like you have some,
because I'm like, yeah, I've been there too. And I love how the timing is of you're like just last night. And I'm excited to hear what you're about to say.
Yeah, well, no. So I was just thinking about how, like, it made me think about how, when I was younger and my parents would my dad would come home, and it was almost like that was the time that I was supposed to spend with him, and how it's almost like it feels like I guess I suddenly became aware of this. It's like a program that's been running in my head, this codependent program of like, oh, this is the time when you stop thinking about yourself. Like you think about them. And it's fine to think about your partner. It's not, but it's like, it literally was like my brain was wiped. I had no control. And I was just really amazed at the power, at the seeming power, like the apparent power of just all that it takes is one trigger and boom, like you're in a different state. So I was just curious of your perspective on this in terms of, codependency, and also in terms of if you do find yourself in a pattern like this, something that gets triggered over and over again, what are the ways that you break that pattern, you break those patterns?
Yeah. Well, great awareness on your part. And, I can just really relate. Like I love what you shared of how loving your dad or loving your partner, spending time with them, that's not wrong, which is why some of this can be kind of confusing. Like, you know what I mean? So it's how it gets warped, and we can tell it gets warped by how we feel from something. Like our feelings will be that litmus test saying like, hey, something's up. So, I'm just like like flashing before my eyes is how I've been in really similar situations. And, even noticing like when I meditate or something at night, I would say, okay, so I'm going to do this meditation. Say it's like important to me, I really want to do this. And I say to myself, okay, well, I know Michael, my husband's coming home soon. So I'm just going to make that be the timer. Like I'm going to make that the boundary. And so I tried that on all experiments, but, Yeah, it's funny because he came home earlier than I thought. I wasn't done with my meditation visualization. And what's happening there is like I'm putting the power into his hands for something I'm saying is important to me. So it didn't work. And what I noticed myself feeling was these really common feelings that we have when we don't have boundaries that are actually honoring our desires, like you're kind of mentioning here, or what I'm hearing you say with that. And some of those feelings can be like a feeling of disappointment, resentment, frustration, feeling small, or like that idea something's not finished, like, and you just keep thinking about it even when you're with that person. And so, what's interesting is that we do those things, and let me say, like, I do those things. What I notice people doing those things for is so that we can show love to that person, right? Like, or because it's coming from a place of a program where we were taught that's what love looks like. Love looks like you stop and you be with your dad. But what's interesting about that is how it actually, like, I think we get afraid to set boundaries. And I'm going to say how we can do that in a second. But we think we're scared to set boundaries because we're afraid it'll show non-love, right? Like if you weren't going to be with your partner, then it's kind of like, oh, he'll think this and he'll think that, or he'll get mad at me, or he'll leave me, or more subtle things like that's just not nice. Yeah. When in reality, what's really nice is when we take care of ourselves and feel amazing and can go out in integrity, say, I'm ready for you. Like, I would love to be with you, rather than it being a default thing.
Yes, because, oh my God, this is so what I'm dealing with right now. Because I'm starting to catch myself. For example, when he's home, and then these days I have a lot going on. So I have things going on for my own podcast and other things that I'm working on at night, like at nighttime.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing the things at night, I almost catch myself going like, okay, like it's like I'm doing the thing and I'm super into it, but then I'll catch myself like looking at the time, like worrying about, like thinking, oh, I hope this ends soon so I can just get back to him. And then when the thing ends and I actually go and get back to him, nothing has changed. He's sitting in the exact same place, and it's literally there's nothing going on. And I sit there, and for one moment, I feel like, I'm so glad I'm back here. And then I'm like, why? What's happening here? Nothing. Like, not that I don't love him or I can't just be with him just doing nothing. That's fine. But again, it was like, what was I rushing for? Like, why was I diminishing the thing that actually lights me up so that I can go rush back to this person who literally has not moved, and nothing has changed, and there's really nothing here that's that exciting for me. It's just this person's here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's when, and I felt that way too. And that's when we become aware of how we kind of self-abandon.
Yes. Self-abandon. I like that term.
Yeah. So it's when we put ourselves, what we want, what maybe, for example, our little girl inside really wants to do, our little boy inside needs. And we kind of put that aside at the expense of somebody else, of giving somebody else his love, of doing what we think is expected of us. And sometimes we don't notice it until we have those conflicting contraction. What's that word Abraham uses all the time? Contrast. Those contrasting moments. Sometimes we don't realize it until after. And then exactly, it's kind of like, wait, why? For example, like, why did I put so much effort in making this huge, extravagant meal for my family when then when you're rushing and you're doing it and you're doing it all for them, and they get home and they don't even want tacos on Tuesday. And then, so we get so annoyed, and we're like, I did this all for you. You didn't even care. Actually, what we didn't do was communicate what we wanted. We didn't communicate to see what they even wanted. We were just trying to get our need, kind of. I mean, this is like in somebody's face to say it this way. Yeah. But it's almost like, wait. Why were you even making the tacos? Yeah. Why were you even doing this extravagant thing? It's probably because like, well, I wanted them to feel good. Okay, what would that do for them to feel good for you? Well, they love it. Okay, so what do you get from them loving it? Well, they love me. They want me to cook more. Therefore, I'm needed. All of a sudden, I've filled this role through this project I've given myself to do for another person. Now, there's, again, nothing wrong with Taco Tuesday. There's nothing wrong with doing something loving for another person. And yet, when we do not take responsibility to find out if that's even what they want or need, that's when I get a curiosity, because I'm like, well, so who are you really doing it for? You know, like I was really doing that so I could feel special. I was really doing that so I could feel needed. I catch myself doing that. When I give advice and I'm just like, I know it's like a zone of genius of mine and I'm just giving this advice, and then say the person's like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, do you understand? Like, how can I help you? Like, and I just notice this, like, again, it comes back. This is how it's such spiritual work, because it's like we notice what we're feeling. We can be the objective observer behind the sensations. So I notice, like, oh my God, I'm feeling so jittery. I'm feeling so off kilter. I'm feeling so nervous. And it's like, why? But what I realized was like, oh, it's because I need them to need me. I need them to need my help. I need them to think that I'm, well, their savior, if I'm going to call myself out here in those minutes. And because why? Well, because I won't have a role if they don't need me. And I'm getting filled up by them. So when I can notice it, which is really a great first step here, is to notice what we're noticing, notice how we're feeling when we do certain things. That's when we can actually turn it around to say, wait, this isn't true service. This is getting a need met.
Wow. Yeah. And how about even on the flip side of that? Like, so inversing that situation, because so this is something like I've been rubbing up against recently is the role that codependent tendencies play in hindering someone essentially from stepping forward into a leadership position. Like I feel I have been called literally, figuratively, spiritually to continuously to step up into a leadership position. And I have, like, in certain ways, I mean, in a lot of ways in my life over this past year, I have, but even more so right now to step forward. And I'm catching myself falling back into, like, it was like last month, I was like going for it. I was like, full steam ahead. Let's do this thing. I'm the ringleader. Let's go. And then all of a sudden this month, it was like something shifted and I kind of dipped back into these old tendencies of like, I don't know, like kind of like letting myself fall back a little bit. And what's been coming to my attention is what it is another form of codependency, because I don't want to go without them. Like I don't want without, and them is whoever is around. Like I don't want to move forward because I think that, I mean, I'm assuming for a number of reasons. Like one is because I feel like I will be alone. Because if you're a leader, you have to be alone in some way at some time. Two, it's like, well, I don't want to leave people behind. Three, it's like, well, if they're, I don't want to like have it too good. And like they, you know, the other people, like they're not going to have it as good or they're not going to be as far. So I'll just hang back here with them. You know what I mean? Like,
really?
So how, you know, can we talk about that a little bit? Like, because I think a lot of people listening here are leaders or are going to be leaders. And I feel like this is something that is going to come up for a lot of us.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing this up. So yeah, this is kind of that flip side. So the last kind of examples are when it's like we cower so that somebody else's power can be identified or honored, kind of a thing, right? Like with a dad or something like that. So we kind of put ourselves down to go up to another leader. Okay. Now it's like we're talking about, well, wait a minute, what happens when I need to be the leader, but I'm noticing I'm holding myself back. So I feel this is huge for light workers, for spiritual people. I think about like Facebook groups sometimes that are like the spiritual Facebook groups, and they have all these like beautiful pictures and like sayings of like shine your light, like you know what I mean, like yes, like and the thing is, right, like the people I sometimes wonder about though, the type of people that do that, where or they're listening to Abraham Hicks all the time, and it's kind of like we're just so proud, we're ready, we get it, we understand how important it is to shine our light, to be the good in the world, to access that and share it. And yet I also notice a lot of those people tend to be really broke, or tend to be really scattered and anxious, or tend to be the ones that are not in that leadership position, right? Like they're like, well, F society, or like F the corporate world. But here's the thing that I see is that it's really, to your point, coming from a place of thinking, what our real fear is. I am too afraid to shine my light because it will hurt other people. Right?
Yeah.
I was just in a workshop like right before this time with everybody here. And it was kind of more of a business I guess, workshop. But what she had us do is say, I want you to write down 5 ways that your business is awesome or unique. And while I was writing, I was like having such a good time. I was like, oh my God, like it's amazing. And then she's like, okay, like let's share it. Who wants to share? And obviously people are like, Rrr! But I was like, oh, I see what she's doing here. Like she's wanting us to be able to share here so we could share out other ways. Got it. So I raised my hand. And I'm starting to say the things that I was so lit up about. Like, I've done a lot of work to be able to see that, the fear isn't always so direct as saying, like, people are going to leave me. Like, it's more subtle. It's like, if I shine too bright, if I'm too pretty, if I'm too articulate, if I'm too awesome, I'm going to leave others behind. And that's our biggest fear, is the fear of abandonment. They'll leave me, or I'm going to be hurting other people by being in my brilliance, by being this light worker, right? Right? So like we get so afraid, but here we go. So like while I'm even familiar with that, and I started to notice stepping into that small zone. Okay. And like, here's the thing. Okay. I cannot wait to talk about it. So like in my, like while I was writing down, I'm like, oh my God, my work has doubled people's income. The energy work is lasting. It can work for health and all these things. And like, I'm more personable. I help people get to the foundational root of the fear. I put dots together really well. Like all of these things I was just so excited about, and they were legit, and I was proud of it. Okay. So in this group though, as I was noticing, like the biggest thing I think is awesome is how multiple clients, but one of them recently literally doubled her income. And the biggest fear she had of signing up with me was that she wouldn't be able to pay her debt because it was such an investment. And by the end of our work, she doubled her income to be able to pay her debt, and she paid me, and now she might enroll again. So I think that's cool. Yeah, like it's bringing together that place of people thinking like spirituality is over here, but I'm also going to hide, and it's not practical. Like it's not affecting my life yet in a tangible way. I like to bridge that gap. So anyway, while I was about to say that, what I noticed in this group of women who maybe like were just starting their business, or I have no idea, but I noticed my voice get smaller at that point. And I said, well, and I have helped women in the past like double their income. And I freaking made a note about it, because I'm out of the place now, luckily, of judgment or having to prove anything. And I was like, noticing. Oh, look at that. Like I literally made a note next to that bullet saying, I noticed myself get quiet, and saying I have done that, rather than this is a thing. Like I do that. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's what I think about. Let's like put it here in some spiritual context. So it's kind of like the age of Aquarius that we're in now. We're in a different age, okay? Where in the past, like eons, we helped others through solidarity. We helped others through being a part of the clan. That was the evolution. That was how we stayed in survival. Like, if you went too far out of the clan, you'd get eaten. Or if you didn't become a carpenter like your dad was a carpenter, you would be broke. So It was about keeping the clan together and helping everybody evolve or grow through connection in that way. Okay.
Yeah.
The age of Aquarius is a whole new age, and we are pioneers here, which is why it's so scary. Why it's so scary. But what we're being called to do to be able to help other people is through sharing our unique brilliance. So in our uniqueness, we can kind of lift up like a comet and invite others to lift up in their uniqueness as well. The reason that can be so scary or feel impossible or not okay is because, one, we're fighting off all of these collective consciousness rules of like, no, that's not gonna work. You're gonna be eaten or whatever. But also kind of this like crab in the bucket scenario, where it's like we think we're going up out of the bucket, we're seeing the light, we're blazing the trail, and these other crabs kind of bring us down, because in the way that we've been taught and they've been taught, it's like, hey, don't shine too bright. What are you doing? You're hurting us. Or this isn't how we've interacted before. So that can be more in like family or relationship dynamics. In terms of our purpose, dude, no. I totally get you. Like, you're right. All of those fears you listed, that, again, noticing what we're noticing and having awareness is first of, I feel like I'm going to leave them behind. I just want to kind of reflect back to you that, you know, in this context here, that's because it's the old paradigm at work.
Right.
Like, that's us saying, and I used to do this. I used to think the only way I can help the poor is by being poor myself. Right. And that I am taking from people if I ever think that I can have more than I need, because I'm taking from them. But notice how that's coming, like that made my heart hurt like a little bit, just because it's like it's coming from a place of lack. It's coming from a place of survival. It's coming from a place of we have to stick together or else. Yeah. That's what drives when we get afraid to shine our light. And not just shine our light, but actually put it into practice by starting a sustainable project, you know, that can continue having us shine our light, or relationships that are there for us that are really healthy for us. So all of that to say, by you or anybody, by all of us doing something differently, noticing the fear, noticing the paradigm, and deciding to blaze past that anyway, that's when people have breakthroughs that are unstoppable, unreal, because we're proving that fear, that paradigm is no longer true.
That is all totally on point. And I totally feel that. And I think, also I just want to share something like, and if anyone else is feeling this way as well, something that's been coming up that I related to that I'm constantly like, why am I doing this? Is, just like I have all the time in the world to, like, during my day, I have all the time in the world to do the things that I need to do, right? That I want to do. Like, I'm blessed to have that ability during my work day, to be like, I want to allocate this time here, and I want to work on this project and this project and this project, whatever I want to work on. And I find myself getting really distracted and off and unfocused, especially when it's things that are related to moving forward, right? Like moving forward into that leadership, right? Or into what I'm into my potential, or I don't want to say it like that, into my purpose, right? Like you're a purpose alignment coach. And realizing that really, like I'm beating up on myself, and then realizing, that all plays back into everything you were just talking about, even just getting off task and off focus. It's like a way of making yourself small again, like a way of kind of like crouching back down and being like, oh, like, I don't have to do that right now, or like, I don't really have to move forward. And, what you said about when one of us can step forward, it's really like about embodying that perspective, like, and seeing how when one of us can step forward, it's actually, instead of the image that I used to get, which is like, oh, I'm too good, or like, you'll think I'm too good, or you'll think that I think I'm too good, right? Mm-hmm. It's more about like, I can do this, so you can do this, And I think it really is all about shifting that posture, and inspiring others to be independent, right? Instead of like acting, because what you were describing, it's like we're acting in a codependent way, even in that, especially in that scenario. So in listening to ourselves and then stepping forward anyway, right? Like stepping forward towards that leadership or whatever it is, we're modeling independence, which is, I guess, is the other side of codependence, right? Independence. Yep. We're modeling independence for other people and showing them like, hey, it's safe. I'm doing it, right? Like I'm being this independent person. I'm not listening to what anyone else is saying, and I'm here and I'm thriving.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I remember having this experience for the first time of seeing somebody do that while I was listening to a Hay House radio episode with Christine Northrup. And I think it's really, everything I agree with what you said. And that's why I love seeing this this intersection between where relationships meet with purpose. Because I think sometimes we can use relationships to prove or to have as an excuse of why we can't do our purpose, or we, it can't happen. Or
can you give an example of that?
Yes. So can I? Yes. And in reality, it's that we get scared to live out our bigger brilliance. So I remember for a long time, I had a hard time with time management because I, like you, have had, larger amounts of time. And I was just like, well, what do I fill this with? So sometimes it'd be scattered. And then I'd be like, where'd the day go? And a lot of times it would be like, God, I didn't even get to doing what I wanted because I was just checking email, or I had to respond to these messages or whatever. So I was therefore saying, these people got in the way. Like, it's their fault I didn't work on my writing project because, oh God, I got so many emails, or like, whatever it is. Like, another example is like, God, I wanted to really start this blog today, but my kid got sick. I can't do it. I got to go pick her up. Or, now there's a lot of laundry. There's just so much laundry. So let me go take care of that. I'm going to have a clear space. I'll feel so much better. Oh my God, it's 4:00. I got to go pick up my kids. God, these damn kids, they make me not think. For me, the way that it came up was how I kept saying I wanted to have a miracle morning, right? Like, I think I say that and then we sleep in. So I was like, I really want to do this, like writing, journaling, reading, like that spiritual miracle morning hour is so important. But yet I was taking now this has not always been the case. But at one point I was taking on so many clients that then I like had clients till 8 p.m. or, cause it was where they, this is something I want to touch on too, but like it was where they could fit their schedule, or, I was just like, I got clients and we have to start at, 8 a.m., whatever. So working late, working early. And so I kept saying, I can't have my miracle morning because of these people, of these clients.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was like, God, like, I'm like kind of hating my business right now. Like, it's not their fault, but why am I so resentful towards them? Like, it's not their fault. Yeah. I kind of like that, but I'm like, but it feels like it. And all of a sudden there's this one night I was laying in bed and playing with my iPhone and saying, okay, what time should I set my alarm? And typically in the past, like I would try to like really tune in and kind of be like, what's the best time for me to wake up with everything factored in? How should I get enough sleep? And And all of a sudden I was like, you know what? Like, if I really wanted this miracle morning, like I should probably get up at 6. And I was like, but it's 11. Like, I'm not going to get enough sleep. And I was just like, well, wait, what if I just like freaking got up early enough so that even if I have a client at 8, like I can still have a an hour and then get ready and have breakfast. So I was like, all right, let's play. Like, up at 6. So by going to sleep, I set my alarm for 6. I woke up kind of like 5:45, like all feeling cuckoo and getting coffee. And I sit my tushes down by 6. And it was still dark, but the lights were on. I was still dazed, but I landed. And I started journaling. And all of a sudden I was like, holy fuck, holy F. I was like, nothing can stop me from doing this. Like Barbara isn't here, client, like nobody's here. And I was like, and it wasn't their decision for me to not wake up at 6 all those other mornings.
Yes.
Right? And you know what's freaking nutso about that, dude, is how like I was journaling, I was writing, I landed and had that realization of like, whoa, I could have done this whole time. Nobody's been stopping me from actually giving this time to myself, even if it means making an uncomfortable decision. Like if I'm going to let them be the excuse, I've given away my power. That's a form of codependency. That's putting them as higher, and then I'm getting resentful like a little child, me rebelling. So it's like, oh, nobody can stop me from writing my book. Nobody can stop me from writing this blog. Nobody can stop me from doing what I want if I just make it happen, and that's my choice, even if it's maybe uncomfortable or there's a consequence, like cause and effect. So here's what's cool. I got so inspired by that. I actually wrote a post about it that kind of like went viral in my little online community.
Hell yeah.
And I think that's so fascinating because it's like when we heal those relationships and realize that the power is within us, that's when like our brilliance actually comes out. We feel inspired, our purpose, and we lift up to show others too that they can do that. Whatever it is, whether we're an artist or whether we're a Reiki practitioner, whatever it is, like whatever will get you inspired to do your craft, to do your good work in the world, like it's like by taking care of ourselves and making our choices for ourselves, that can feel scary because we think others won't get love. But when we actually, that's codependency. But when we actually make the choice, that's what gives us the juice to live out our bigger brilliance. And that's when our spirituality gets like embodied in a practical way. And we actually can write the book, or we actually can do the thing. Like, and you know, okay. So that's a thing. And really quick, just one other note on like scheduling or things coming up, wrenches being thrown into your schedule. And then now you can't do it. Oh my God. It's like, it can even be codependency coming up when you have clients all over the place, or when you're checking your email instead of first doing what's most important. How we spend our time can also be a reflection of where we think we're getting our needs met through other people. Well, I have to respond to him right now. Why? Yeah. Because, well, he might not pay me. He'll be mad. Oh, what will happen when he's mad? I won't get paid. I won't be okay. He'll leave me. Boom. No. The power is in you. And when we put what's most important first, or have boundaries around our time, with my example, it wasn't a problem that, Lisa wanted to meet until 8 p.m. Guess who allowed it to happen? Me. I said, you don't get off work until, okay, 7. Okay, yeah, let's wait for 7 a.m. That's how I'm putting her, and what is she going to do? She's going to be like, great, right? Yeah. Right. But when I've like, no, it's like, I'm going down with this ship. Yeah. And even if this fails, because I chose to actually put my business hours how I wanted, I chose to have a boundary around doing what I value and then what other people need, and it fails, at least I'll go down knowing I did this on my terms. At least I'll see that it could have happened because it was on my watch. It was on my power here. And what I have found is that typically people, they might get uncomfortable. They might get a little throwback. They're like, oh, okay, I guess I can do this on my lunch hour, 12. Like people weren't complaining when I started to cut back my hours so that I could get and have a miracle morning and not feel like I was working all the time. But even, dude, so all of that to say, when we put the laundry, when we put the kid, when we put the client, when we put our email ahead of what we think we want to do, dude, I want to challenge you. You're putting your power outside. That's a codependent behavior. It's about bringing it back.
Oh, man. Amen. And also, the visual I was getting when you were talking about that, about, when you're putting everything outside of yourself, or especially when you're talking about scheduling the clients, because I've fallen into that too with my clients. It's like, you're saying something to yourself and to the universe about your worth and about your time and about and that says something, and that's energetic, And so it's like, we have this perception. It's like, oh no, I better make myself as available as possible to acquiesce everyone else. But when we do that, it's like we've talked about, coming from a scarcity mindset and a mindset of, if I don't do this, I'm not going to have no one. If I don't do this, they're going to say no, they won't be interested anymore. And so what does that say? We think that by doing that, we'll actually give ourselves more value, and we'll actually, for example, make more money or bring in more clients. And in actuality, it probably ends up doing the opposite, because we're saying to the universe, I'm not worthy of this, or I'm not enough to for this person to change their schedule, or, I need to acquiesce to them instead of other people, acquiescing to who I am and what I'm doing. And so I think that's interesting. And so there's something also that came up and this is just one more thing that I want your input on. And it just came into my awareness as you were talking about, whatever that happened, that you ended up making a Facebook post about it, and that went viral. So what about the codependency of social media? When what I mean by that specifically is when you post something, judging, I know everyone on here has done this. You post something, you've put time into this, you put thought into this, or you've just put a lot of meaning and intention into this, or you felt really good energy about this. I want to say this thing. This feels so right. I'm going to post this, whether it's a photo or a live video, whatever it is. And you think this is going to be great because you've gotten good response on things before. And then you post the thing, and then it's people are meh, there's likes on it, whatever, but no one's applauding you. No one's this is so true. It's just kind of a mediocre or minimal, yeah, cool. And what do you I know that for me, that is something I've been struggling with so much, because I go through this war in my head, and it's part of me feels like I'm dying, actually dying. And another part of when that happens, and another part of me feels well, you're not doing it for you don't need to do it for applause. You don't need the applause. You're doing it because you felt inspired to do it. Just stay with that, hold strong in that. And another part's no, everybody's seeing that I'm not the best, and I'm not the most amazing, and I'm not, there's this other part of me that feels I need other people to agree with me. Good. I need other people to say that I'm right. I need other people to be yeah, girl, and feed the energy. And when they don't, there's a part of me that literally feels why do I even do anything? Why am I doing anything? And I mean, if that isn't codependent, I don't know what is.
So I would ask that part of you, why do you need that?
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable answering that?
Why do I need it? Why do I need it? Why do I need their response? I'm thinking. Because, well, I guess the thing that's flashing through my mind right now is that when I was little, my parents worked a lot, and they would call me every single day. They worked in the news, so they were always gone. So they would call me every single day after work, or after I got home from school, and they would each ask me, "What did you do today?" And I would tell them everything that happened in the day, which is probably great. Imagine a little kid telling you every single thing that happened in their day. So I would tell them, but my parents were so patient with me, and I think that they really wanted to connect with me. Again, it's a theme in my life. They really wanted me to feel like they were there, even though they weren't. So they would basically applaud every single thing I told them. They'd be wow, that's so awesome. And wow, that's so great. And wow, that's so exciting. To everything I said. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that feels like love to me.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And
Yeah. So when people don't do that, I feel like I'm not important and I'm not seen and no one loves me.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's the power of this work. I mean, this is us tapping the surface, right? But to see how it's not about the post, you know, it's about that. And what I'm hearing from that is how you survived in the family. Okay, let's put it this way. You learned what you needed to do to get the approval and the love and the attention of your family, of your parents in that particular family dynamic. And so it's not the same for all the family dynamics. And that's how we learn. We're just these big old light beings and come in to these little bodies and we learn this. And so it's like, oh, okay, I get it. I know what I need to do. They want me to say what I did. I'll tell them everything. And so what I notice in that, Alexa, is how, and thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable here, because I'm sure this relates to a lot of people, is how much value was put on what you did. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like and let's even look at appreciation, love, attention. Those aren't just those lovey-dovey self-worth, self-esteem type of things. If we don't get those as little kids and our parents leave us or don't give those to us, that means we don't get fed. That means we don't get our needs met. And that means we die as the 4-year-old or the 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. So that's why attention and appreciation in that place as a kid is so important. It feels so vital. And so when we don't get it now, it can feel so like, what's my worth? What am I doing? But what I'm hearing from that is how, you got a lot of attention. You got that need met through showing what you did. And so and then you got the applause. And so it's almost then saying like, I'm not going to get applause or love or appreciation just for who I am. Yeah. And so let me put this post out to show what I can do. And maybe even show what I am and like show what I love and show what I, am inspired about. But that piece of you that needs to get the approval or the applause, that's where it's coming from, a dynamic that is at the root. And so with you, I would do energy work with that to go to that memory again and like clear it out and reassemble it. But to even have the awareness to say, oh, like, yeah, that's when the posts don't go viral, because we do it because we think we need it. We need it to do something for us. And if it doesn't, it's like this, I almost see like this gripping, right? This grasping, like need. And that's honestly, to me, that's like our ego. That's the piece of us that's trying to protect us. That's also believing we're separate.
Yeah. Totally. Oh my God. And it's interesting too, because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking like, and the opposite of the approval is intense shame. Like shame, it literally almost feels like I did something wrong. Like if I make a post in this example, if I make a post and I like put intention in it, or I'm like telling some part of myself or whatever, and I don't get the love I want, like the applause that I want, or the quote unquote applause. In the opposite of that will be, I will feel intense shame and fear, like intense. And I'm like, what? Like I get feeling like down in, but not like this intense, like I feel like I'm being threatened physically. And so, like connecting it back to survival and like, oh God, like something's going to happen to me, or, oh God, like maybe, or it makes perfect sense. Like, oh God, I did something really wrong. Cause if I like, otherwise I would be getting the love, like I would be getting the applause.
Right.
And definitely, and I think, and totally, I mean, what you said also about it being the ego and that like tight grip, I resonate with that so much. And, it's like the feeling that I need to do something or perform in a certain way. That resonates, like perform in a certain way, do some sort of action, in order to receive the love, instead of just knowing that I am loved and that whatever I want to share, it is fine, and is great and is like, is perfect, because it's coming from me, but that I don't have to actually like do something in order to achieve something. It's like doing something because it feels in alignment with me and it feels like something I want to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, shame comes from when we think we are wrong. Guilt comes from when we think we did something wrong. And a lot of the time, the reason we feel like we're walking on eggshells when talking to certain people, if they could leave us and we're scared of that, or we're afraid to be too brilliant and leave others behind, is because there's shame and we've experienced shame around who we are. It's not safe to be too smart. It's not safe to be too brilliant. And so when we have the courage to write a post or share how we feel, and it's opening up that place within us that's like showing our heart, and it doesn't get the response we want, that can be what creates that shame and trigger what has caused that shame to happen already before, where it's basically, it's not enough to just show, like, clearly because I'm not getting the approval or the quote unquote applause, it's not enough just to be myself. And it's funny because this is something I was just working on with my mentor and coach. I worked on with some of my clients just yesterday, was how much emphasis we put on doing and how we get approval when we do something great, even if it is sharing our heart, or even if it is like opening up. It's like, what if we could just be nice to ourselves and honor ourselves because of who we are? What if we got to honor ourselves just because we're enough as we are? And that's even something like, I think it can take more time to really get into than a couple minutes. But it's just really interesting because that's what can lead to burnout, to work burnout, to relationship burnouts, when we put everything into something. But why are we doing it? It's because we're trying to get a need met from doing that. Or we put identity in, this is who I am. And so when people don't like the tacos because we're or we, they don't appreciate it, or people don't appreciate how vulnerable you got in a post. It's kind of like there's this invisible thread connecting that post to your need. And so then your need doesn't get met, but let's look, we weren't writing it to be inspired and to inspire others, really. We're writing it to get our need met. And people, I think, feel that. And so it's kind of like, it's this vulnerable place to broaden our frame of giving ourselves a pat on the back, broadening our frame of giving ourselves permission to be nice to ourselves just because we are. Just because we exist, just because of whatever it is of who we are, like just to soften a little bit. But to this point, also just not to just cut the cords of why we're doing something. And if that means we have to get our need met in another way, and then we post. But to say to another person, like I used to energetically with the people I would work with, like, you must sign up because otherwise I won't get my rent paid. Like that feeling, or when I would post, it would be that intense. And so then if I wrote a really great post and it didn't get attention, I'd be like, well, F everybody. Like, I can't get my needs met and you don't care. And I'm showing you who I am. Like, why am I doing this? Let me go serve at tables, like at a restaurant. It was, and yet what am I doing? I'm not communicating what I need. And I'm putting the responsibility, the ability to respond on those people to say, you need to pay my rent. And that was another moment of realizing my clients weren't stopping me from going to the kitchen table at 6 a.m. and starting my miracle morning. I thought they were, but that was just me not claiming my authority and my responsibility to say, I'm doing this. I'm going to make this happen no matter what. It's a lot easier to put it on somebody else and then to say, well, look, see, I can't do it, or this was your fault. So by communicating what we actually need and taking responsibility to say, oh, I can get my rent paid in other ways, or I can, it's my job. It's my job to make sure I'm okay without the approval of somebody on Facebook.
Yeah. Yes.
We choose different things. And then we're like, oh God, I really love that smoothie I just made for myself. I love how I got 9 hours of sleep. I'm taking care of myself through that. I feel so good. I want to write about this. And then you write and people are like, oh my God, that smoothie picture was the best. Like,
that's so true.
I didn't even know because I didn't care because I wasn't attached.
Yeah.
And then people feel free because you felt free.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what a perfect way to sum this all up. Colleen, this has been awesome. And thank you for all of your wisdom and everything you shared. I think people listening definitely are expanding through this conversation. I know I have. And if people want to get in touch with you or work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on my little bitty Instagram. It's still growing. It hasn't been my focus, but Colleen Coles is where I'm at. Facebook, Colleen Coles. My website is really cool. It's colleencoles.com. That's probably the best way. So, yeah, and then YouTube too, Colleen Coles. It's all Colleen Coles. Colleen Coles. And on my website, colleencoles.com, I have a freebie right now, which is a training. It's really great. It was a coaching training, and the people who got to hear it live paid for the program, but I got to receive it, and I'm giving it for free right now. So that's everything you need to know overcoming codependency, and basically how to raise your standards without leaving others behind.
Ooh, love it. Perfect. Well, thank you, Colleen, so much. And until next time, hope you have a beautiful day. See you later.
All right. Ciao for now.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. If you're a listener with a story to share and are interested in being featured on a future episode of this special series, you can email me at alexa@positivehead.com. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear Brandon constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place we know of to do it. Period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Otherwise, tune in next Friday for another HeAd Posse episode. And until then, as Brandon always says, journey well.